So as the banking system is collapsing all around us, the Fed decided to hike rates yet again, presumably because not hiking rates would be an admission that there's a problem. And the Fed, of course, cannot admit that there's a problem in the banking system because that would cause panic, you see. So they just have to act like everything's totally normal and fine. And so it seems like from now on, they won't be hiking rates. At least they left themselves open to do that, for presumably unrelated reasons. It has nothing to do with all these bank collapses. No. Jerome Powell made it absolutely clear. He's not worried about any of that. That is of no real concern to him. In fact, it's not even entirely related to his job. He said, well, you should talk more to the FDIC about that. Oh, you should talk to, vice chair for oversight, basically talking to that like they're a completely separate person, like the vice chair for oversight is not below the chairman at the Fed. And he said, well, they're responsible directly to Congress, and so, I really try and defer to them. This bank stuff, I don't concern myself with it. It has nothing really to do with me, not impacting my decisions and the decisions of the board. No, we're just proceeding with our regularly scheduled rate hikes, and we just don't plan on scheduling any more rate hikes, is basically the attitude. Now, at the same time, within hours of the Fed's rate hike, Ukraine decided to bomb the Kremlin, which, not a very good idea, methinks. So I'm kind of torn. I mean, I always on this channel talk about the Fed on Fed Day, and today is Fed Day, but I mean, I can't not talk about Ukraine bombing the Kremlin. It's not like for months we've been hearing that Zelensky's been wanting to launch strikes on Moscow, and the Biden administration has been gently telling him, no, son, you're not going to do that. Well, it seems that the Uknats decided to do it anyway, and conveniently Zelensky is out of Ukraine when it happens, so it's not like Russia can immediately launch a retaliatory strike and try and take out Zelensky. Now, Putin apparently was not harmed, and in fact, I've heard some people in the West poo-pooing this Ukrainian strike on the Kremlin because, well, it wasn't a very big explosion. In fact, this could just be a Russian false flag, which, of course, that's always possible, but, it's convenient how the Western media says that when something happens in the West, it's never a false flag, and when something happens to Russia, it's always a false flag. So, as of right now, what we do know is that there is video of some kind of explosion over the Kremlin, and the Russians say that that was because they shot down a drone that was apparently going, a suicide drone, that was going to strike the Kremlin. Now, Kremlin is a big complex, so the odds of it hitting exactly where Putin was maybe are low, but if some other country launched a suicide drone which landed and exploded in the general vicinity of the White House, perhaps even on the White House grounds, I don't think that the United States would take that very lightly. I don't think that they would say, oh, this is just a, who knows? This is, let's just let bygones be bygones. No, they would call that an attempted assassination on the President of the United States. So it's very appropriate that the Ruskies are also calling this an attempted assassination on Mr. Putin. Now, a lot of pro-Russia people are quite upset at this because they do not feel that Putin will do much to retaliate. The pro-Russian side seems to think that their government is more bark than bite, which is an interesting perspective. It just shows you that it's important when there are multiple sides, as there always are in global politics or domestic politics, it's valuable to understand what people are saying on different sides of the issue. So, what the takeaway here is that, to me, it seems that there is a lot of pressure on Putin to launch a tough response to this, to really look like he's going to, answer in kind. And so, we'll have to see what happens when Zelensky eventually makes it back to Ukraine. I assume he will go back at some point. Immediately after this happened, it was announced, Zelensky's going to be staying out of the country a little longer than usual. He was in Finland at the time, conveniently. And now he's saying, you know, maybe I'll take a trip to Germany too, and I'll stay in Finland for a few extra days. You know, I'm having a nice time, so well, why not, right? And so it seems that Zelensky wants to give Putin some time to calm down. And hopefully by the time he gets back, he's thinking, well, maybe Putin won't blow up my house. But who knows? I mean, this is a pretty big escalation. Knowing that the United States government, my government, is 100% responsible for Ukraine making it this far in the war, that you know, Ukraine would have ceased to exist a long time ago without American aid, that Ukraine is you know, an American proxy state. It does make me rather uncomfortable that an American proxy is launching airstrikes on the Kremlin. Because I think it wouldn't be too much of a stretch for people in Russia to look at this as a U.S. attack on the Russian state. Seems like a pretty easy line to connect. At this point, we're leaving it up to the goodwill and the common sense of the Russian government to avoid a third world war, because the U.S. side and the U.S. You know, and its proxies seem hell-bent on doing everything short of formally declaring World War III and saying we're in World War III. They're just trying to do everything they can to goad Russia into doing it for them, which frankly is rather concerning. You know, I just have to chuckle in order to just, you know, diffuse the stress of the situation. You know, nobody else is worried about it in America, and everyone's ignorant. You know, why should I bear all of the grief myself over something that, you know, may or may not happen? I can't control it, and so I will just have to let go of my fears and embrace the atomic rapture. Whatever happens, happens, I guess. After all, if you try and, you know, show any concern for this publicly, well, then, you know, you're just a Russian stooge, or a Russian toady, or a Russian useful idiot. So I guess I strayed off of the topic of the Fed pretty quickly today. I'll try and come back to that topic tomorrow. And say more about that, but I did at least want to address it, so I guess I got it out there. Hey, the Fed hiked rates, for those of you who hadn't heard. But I mean, it's hard not to focus on the Kremlin situation, because that is so much more dire. I mean, you know, little bits here and there about interest rates. I mean, it's hard to care about that on a day where we are literally on the brink of a third world war, you know, on the brink of a nuclear holocaust. You know, if Putin was this hothead that they tell us he is, it would be the end of the world. But thankfully, as has been proven in the past few years, Putin has a lot of self-restraint. He's a lot more restraint than almost anyone in Washington. So with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.